Hello, brothers.
Oh boy, something tells me this is going to be an entertaining thing to sit through. Alright, guys, let's get ready to see what happens next.
Lomax here. I would like to discuss some stuff that I've been thinking about. A lot of people say incels are dangerous.
Now, personally, I myself, for example, don't think incels themselves are necessarily dangerous, provided they're not completely out of their fucking minds as a person. But if you look at a lot of their views and a lot of their ideologies and a lot of the things that people in the black pill incel or the forever alone incel subgroups think in regards to how they view men in relationships and how they view women, and some of the really fucked up, horrible views they have on other people where they wish death and violence upon those who either have sex or have relationships, you would understand why some people might consider those people a little bit dangerous, because they openly spew their vitriol to people that are gullible, that will believe it, and that will fall in line with their ideals, as well as the fact that a lot of these people openly have seemingly no compunction with openly saying they intend to do such things, even if they don't necessarily mean it. The fact that they say it alone is kind of concerning because it suggests they might be dangerous. But yeah, it's not that the group themselves are not dangerous, it's just that there are specific people in the group, which would obviously lead someone to believe they might be dangerous. And that's why it is a person might have to look really close at the group and what that group's up to and what they're into, just to make sure that the things they're all about won't potentially come back to bite society in the ass.
I believe myself that incels are among the most oppressed groups in the world, or at least in overall in North America, more than any woman or African American or fucking any minority group in North America. And that's because, those people, they're all celebrated in mainstream media and stuff, but incels, no. Incels are depicted as evil.
Because I'm sure we can all remember the amount of incels that were culturally and systemically oppressed by law enforcement and by the government and by money loaners and people like that, who more or less could make or break someone's entire life on account of them not being the right kind of person. Actually, no, that wasn't really an incel thing that they were going through. It was something that the American government had done to the black community and still does to some parts of this country to this day. Now, I will admit that incels should not be represented as these mindless, hostile, homicidal assholes who go around gunning down men and women for having relationships or being happy. But the problem is, a lot of that comes from the fact that you guys will not weed your own garden, so to speak. You will not try to weed out the toxic assholes in your communities or in your groups. Because instead of trying to encourage each other to do better for yourselves and each other so you guys can lift each other up, you guys just kind of sit there and allow the very vocal and very vitriolic minority in your community to be the one that essentially speaks for you, instead of putting your foot down and saying, shut the fuck up, you're not in charge of us, you're not the voice of us, and if you keep doing this kind of shit, where you make all of us look like crazy, homicidal, borderline rapist, asshole, nice guy creeps, we're all gonna tell you to get the fuck out and we're gonna all abandon you. Because realistically, it's those people that are responsible for the stigma that the incels go through. I do feel bad for the incels who are just genuinely socially anxious people who might not know how to socialize, because those people are kind of being dragged in to the group of the militant and the radicals who go out of their way to do horrible shit to other people because they act fucking crazy. But a lot of it does start with the community. You guys have to be willing to straight up admonish people who will actively simp for people like Alec Manasseh and Jake Davison or Elliot Rodger. You have to be willing to straight up tell those people to shut the fuck up in your group. Because otherwise, they're the ones that people are going to be pointing at, and those are the guys that are going to become the unofficial voice of the group. Because those ones are usually the loudest and most open about their grievances, even if their grievances are entirely self-made and imaginary to everyone else but them. If you really want to hold people accountable, you need to start with the people that are inside the group that aid in the group being stigmatized and vilified as a unit. Otherwise, people are going to keep stigmatizing and keep generalizing because you guys are not holding these incredibly crazy people accountable. You need to be willing to throw the people out of the community or out of the group that you guys have established for yourselves, because these people are not contributing to a wholesome group where you guys encourage personal growth and personal development. It instead contributes to producing a subsect or a splinter group of people who are angry, violent assholes who think the world is owed to them because they happen to have a dick. If you really want to make your group better, first thing starts with kicking those guys out and encouraging yourself and those like you to keep bettering yourselves for the sake of personal growth. Because the sky's the limit if you really invest time and energy into trying to be a better person. But let's see what else is going to be said here.
And a lot of the reason why why they're considered evil is because a lot of killers, like mass murderers, have identified as incels. And I think it's kind of ridiculous putting all of people, like taking a group of people and like only amounting them to the few bad seeds there are.
Yes, it's true that it's not fair. It's true that it's not fair to try to amount an entire group of people to a handful of assholes who do something terrible. But again, I need to reiterate, it is also the responsibility of the community that gives rise to these kinds of ideologies and these kinds of beliefs to put the curb on that shit when they realize it's starting to radicalize and incentivize someone to commit murder. I mean, when you see someone on a forum talking about how they're going to commit a mass homicide, for example, the worst thing you could ever do, as some of the people did when Elliot Rodger was talking about it, they were actually encouraging him. And worse, there are people that are mentally disturbed enough to actually endorse his behavior and praise him for what he did in the incel community, despite the fact that what he did was meaningless and didn't accomplish anything except establish a negative connotation with the term incel. Again, I'm just going to say it a second time for the slow people in the back. If you want stigmatization around a group to no longer be a thing, then the bad seeds must be culled by the group. Otherwise, they are going to be the ones that will establish the baseline assessment for everyone in the group, regardless of how untrue it might be.
Um, it's like a lot of mass shooters have autism, so are you gonna fucking vilify everyone who has autism?
Okay, well, that's a little bit of a false equivalency because you see, when people have autism, they don't choose to have it. It's more like a predisposed condition that your genes more or less will either choose to bless you with so that you're able to think about some things in an incredibly advanced manner, or it's one that your genes fuck you with because then it basically acts like a giant middle finger to any attempt to get further in life because it acts like an impediment to everything you might want to do. Now, granted, it might not necessarily stop you for good, but it will definitely delay the shit out of your progress because you see the world differently. Either in a different way that allows you to see everything better, or in a way that allows you to see everything in a much more restricted way. But the fact is, when an incel does something horrific, it's because they chose to believe things that people were spoon feeding them on the internet. Some of it is also derived from personal insecurities and personal inadequacies and just feelings of regret, of rejection and resentment for society and for the female gender because they feel as though they're being disrespected because they're not being chosen to be someone's boyfriend. But a lot of it does come from the fact that a person chooses to think these things. They choose to go out of their way to believe in an ideology that more or less convinces them that women are against them, that other men are assholes for no reason, that everyone that's in a relationship is a whore if it's a chick, and if it's a guy, even if the guy is monogamous, they're still basically being brainwashed to believe that the guy is just fucking her and three other women simultaneously, just so the person that's seething about it won't get laid. When the reality is, it's usually just a monogamous couple on a relationship, whether they be teenagers or adults. And the problem is, it's gone to the point where a person is convinced that the world is just out to fuck them over. And because they don't stop to question whether or not any of that's true, and they believe it wholeheartedly because they choose to believe that rather than try to confront their problems head on, that's why it is that it's so different. And that's why it's not really a great equivalency, because there's a difference between having a genetic predisposition toward a disorder or being differently able to the point where you see things differently. And then there's actively choosing to believe in a belief system and ideology, which poisons you mentally and socially and basically makes it easier for someone to take their insecurities and failings on others. Now, not every incel is like that. I will openly say that. But the problem is, like I said, the very vocal minority are the ones that often represent you guys because you guys will not put the curb on that shit.
You know, but it does it does in this video I'd like to discuss kind of what I think about the about the incel ideology and the mass murders associated with it, and what I personally think of it. First of all, Attorney Glowy's watching this. I don't condone murder or hurting others. But what I do think is that I think the problems that incels face are very, very important for society to look at.
When you start referring to people that may be critical or skeptical of your views as bullies, you're not helping your case. I'm just going to say that now, so that way you may be able to understand down the road why it is that's not a particularly wise thing to refer to people as when they may just be trying to scrutinize what you say. But I'm gonna, like, what exactly are the issues with incels that society needs to be aware of? Are you referring to the concept of male loneliness? Are you referring to the male suicide rate? Are you referring to the male depression issue? Are you referring to the fact that men's suicide and men's social anxiety is not really treated as seriously as women's social anxiety, and that there does seem to be kind of an imbalance when it comes down to how serious emotional and psychological issues are dealt with between men and women? Because if those are the questions you really like to ask, if those are the issues that you feel need to be addressed, those are not incel issues. Those are male issues that society ignores. And this is if you exclude like the fatherhood and the divorce court, paternity court things that happen, and things that happen in family court. If you want to refer to things that might be considered as quote incel problems, but the reality is the male problems are not necessarily incel problems. It's mainly problems that affect most men in situations that are negative. But what exactly would you classify as incel problems?
And I don't believe people who go out and kill people and identify as incels. I don't think that harms that belief. I believe it actually helps it, because in my personal opinion, nobody would ever go out and hurt so many people if they weren't in so much mental pain. And you're probably thinking like, oh, like I'm defending these people. Like, no. I'm saying these are mentally sick people who, a lot of them, and this is a fact, they probably would not have done what they did if they weren't so mentally sick.
Okay, I'm gonna have to respectfully disagree. These people still most likely would have done what they did, except they would have done it to a partner and be even more fucked up and be even more abusive. Let's be honest. If Elliot Rodger or Jake Davidson managed to rope a woman into a relationship because they might have been tricked into believing that they were decent men with sweet words or financial gifts or like pretty gifts, they would quickly be treated like nothing more but cheap prostitutes by these people. The way they dehumanized and devalued other people because of what was between their legs and because of their desire for sex is a pretty good indication of what probably would have happened had they actually gotten into a relationship. Like, keep in mind, these people were not in pain because society was trying to destroy them. They were in pain because they chose not to try to find a way to deal with their problems. They didn't try to talk to someone or reach out to someone and make friends. They more or less acted like vicious dicks to everyone, did everything they could to act pretentious and self righteous about the fact that they thought they were better than everyone. And then when they finally ended up between a rock and a hard place, instead of sitting down and thinking to themselves, you know what, life's kind of gone to shit for me right now. I need to figure out a way out of this, and I need to get myself into a much better place, mentally and emotionally. But instead of trying to maybe pursue therapy or talk to someone they knew, hell, even if they were to like pursue religion and find God, even if I'm not religious, there are people who have found religion and it's more or less been used as a saving grace to pull them out of like a really dark pit in their life. Even if I don't really understand the concept of asking an invisible man for help, it apparently has helped enough people to convince them not to do horrible shit. But the fact is, these people were not in pain because society was out to get them. They were in pain because they themselves more or less designed a hell of their own making and then chose to sit in it until finally they felt like they had to spread it to other people. And people like that would hurt a movement because people like that are more or less used as a figurehead against you. They're not used as painful reminders of what happens when someone doesn't listen. They're used as painful reminders of what happens when someone's mental health goes unchecked because they start to believe they're entitled to things they don't rightfully deserve just for having a pulse. Like, that's the part of this coin that I don't think you're really looking at really well, is the fact that you're not really examining the fact that people like this will always be fucked up. They will always exist. The only thing you can do to prevent them from getting power and recognition is to either shut them up by proving them to be a dumb fucking bellend that doesn't know what the hell they're talking about, or convince them to seek professional help so that they won't do something crazy to hurt someone else. Those are the two best options. Hopefully, I'd go for option B because maybe they can make something of their lives, but sometimes option A might be the only viable recourse. And I just personally think that you trying to say, oh, they were mentally hurting, they were mentally sick, even if you're not excusing their actions, it kind of seems like you're trying to pawn it off on people who otherwise had nothing to do with these people's problems.
And a lot of the reasons why they're mentally sick is because of the issues that we incels face on a regular basis.
Okay, well, you're going to elaborate exactly what those issues are, or is it just going to be, those issues that I will not go into, because they are more than likely going to be some stupid shit that's not a big deal, because we'd rather make a small thing into a molehill, into a mountain, because we have nothing else to do with our time except scream at society and blame others, instead of trying to consult a counselor or a therapist, or maybe a prescription for anti anxiety medications or antidepressants, at least enough to keep us on an even enough keel to the point to where we can go out and do things and maybe meet people and try to develop social skills. I don't know. Part of me suspects that's what's going to be coming this way. But I could be wrong, and because I might be wrong, I'm going to wait to see what happens next.
And no one looks at improving mental health or actually solving issues that incels have. Instead we label them as terrorists. We label them as evil. We try to censor them. We try to block their viewpoint out. And I don't think that's right, honestly. And another point that people make is when some fucking, say the Parkland shooting, people say I'm a virgin, I have autism, I don't go out to shoot people, and it bugs me, those comments, because they don't know what the person's problem is.
Well, they were terrorists, and they were evil. Everything that the people like Elliot Rodger and Jake Davidson and Alec Manassian did in those moments was nothing but pure anger and hatred being weaponized against others, resulting in Davidson and Rodger taking other lives before taking their own because they realized they could not flee from law enforcement after they were both wounded and stuck somewhere when law enforcement was gradually closing in. They are evil, and they are terrorists. If you want someone to be heard, that's fine. But the problem is a lot of the rhetoric that people usually repeat on these incel forums, it's usually not people trying to encourage people to raise themselves up and raise each other up so that they can be better, so that they can be happy and accomplish the goals they want to accomplish. Instead, it's usually just a bunch of people bashing people for having relationships and bashing women for being in relationships but not with them. It very rarely ever is wholesome, because most of the time it's just a bunch of angry, bitter assholes gathered around in a group, taking pot shots at people who they feel have personally wronged them. And whether or not you like those comments or not, those comments are fairly reasonable. If someone documents that their main grievance about being an incel is being a virgin, and that's the reason they're pissed off at everyone, that's the reason they want other people dead, is because other people are getting laid and they're not, then people have every right to say that that person is kind of fucked up, and they have every right to make the point that them being autistic or a virgin should not justify someone wantonly taking the life of another human being. Especially when that's genuinely the majority, if not the entirety, of the grievance of the person in question who goes out and commits this act. See, here's the part where you're kind of starting to downslide into apologist territory. You might want to mind your footing a little bit here. It's a slippery slope. Literally.
Like they don't experience what the other person experiences just because they have some problems that they think relate to the perpetrator. They think like, oh, well, if I was him, I wouldn't do it. That's bullshit. Okay, because you have never experienced things from their point of view. You don't know their struggles, their internal struggles, what they have to go through, their amount of coping ability. It's like complete bullshit. And like I've had thoughts of hurting people before. I don't currently, so glowies, don't go arresting me and sending me to any hospital again. But yeah, I've had thoughts of hurting people, and that's just because I was so mentally sick, and I have very few coping abilities, and I have very few people to talk to, and I have very bad thoughts that aren't my fault, honestly. And people who have those thoughts, they deserve to be, treated for them, and they shouldn't be vilified for it, That's just my honest opinion. And I'm not no glorification of any mass murderers, okay? I don't glorify or condone murder or hurting others. But yeah, I just wanted to get this off my mind. Oh yeah, also, I said I was gonna do the incel protest on Wednesday, and it's Thursday morning, and I have not. I had a very busy day yesterday. I had to do a lot of walking around, which I did not anticipate I would be so busy yesterday, and I just didn't really feel like doing the protest, just because you can only do so much walking around and doing stuff, and I had to walk around in like different directions. I had to fucking withdraw money from my bank card. I had to fucking return an overdue book to the library and pay for that, I had to go grocery shopping, I had a lot of stuff to do. I guess maybe you might see that as me excusing me being a lazy piece of shit, but I will do it today when it gets brighter out. I'll go to the downtown region of my city, and I have my sign here, and I will protest and film it. I'm probably gonna edit it. I don't know much about editing, but it's not that hard. You have the internet, you can look up how to edit. So yeah, I might. So it might be a bit of a long video, so I'm gonna edit parts out, make it seem more, even and more. Just cut to the interesting parts. Because I'm sure I'm gonna be standing there for a while until something interesting happens. But yeah. Anyway, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Really helps me out. Thanks, guys. Peace, brothers.
Okay, again, I need to know, what are these incel rights that you want so badly? Because again, you didn't really elaborate as to what those rights were in the entire fucking video. And even if that wasn't the title of the video, which it wasn't, it still would have been a poignant thing to bring up. It would have been a very relevant and very important pinpoint to include in the video. Instead of just this vagary where it's like, I'll bring up this, I'll bring up that. It's like, but there is no this or that because you're using blanket statements that are not being very descriptive to try to tell people what you're going to do without telling people what you're going to do. If you want to protest, fine, go ahead. You have the right to protest as long as you don't go around breaking stuff or attacking people, that's fine. But the problem is, you don't really seem to really know what it is you're about and what it is these rights are that you're actually after. I think that you're just a very confused young man that doesn't really know anything about life yet and is trying his hardest to maybe find a place where he has some kind of belonging. But the problem is you're gravitating towards a group of people who will most likely fill your head full of vitriol and anger and pain towards other people, and then it will radicalize you and make you hate and dislike other people because they have what you do not. Or you might be lucky and end up in a group of people who genuinely want to help elevate you as a person, but you also have to be willing to hold each other to the same standard and be on an even keel. Like, all I'm gonna say is you seem like a very confused young man that doesn't seem where he's going in life. And honestly, I hope you figure yourself out before you do something crazy. Because judging by how frantic you are here, it's a little bit concerning.